Let's bring in Terry Alexander, South Carolina State Representative and a Bernie Sanders supporter, Maria Cardona, CNN political commentator and Democratic strategist, also a Hillary Clinton supporter. And Terry, I want to start with you. Some of that video we saw at the end of that piece was Claflin University yesterday. We know that Bernie Sanders typically has a strength among young voters, college students. The reporting is that there were fewer than half of the number of students expected there, and that they were expecting 450 or about 200, and that he is not as strong here, a young college student, specifically African-American college students. Why?
Well, I don't think that's really the case, that he's not as strong. He has a very strong following with the young African-American people here in the state of South Carolina. Why they didn't turn out at Claflin College, I don't know. Maybe there's a lot of things going on there. But Bernie is resonating with those young folks. They want to see a change. They want something different to happen in Washington, D.C. They are tired of the same old business being led by the same old people. And Bernie represents something new. He represents a revolution that's going to adjust how business is being done in Washington, D.C. And you can see that revolution taking place even in some of the remarks that Hillary Clinton is talking about. Now she's beginning to talk about those issues that Bernie has been talking about everywhere, not only in a black state of South Carolina, not in Harlem, but Bernie Sanders has been talking about that in Iowa, in New Hampshire. So he's been talking about those issues that's relative to the African American community from the very beginning.
We'll see if those young voters show up at the polls today. Maria, let me come to you. Does this expectation that Hillary Clinton will win by a large margin hurt her potentially? Maybe some of the voters who might have been excited if this were a much tighter race will stay home, and maybe this margin will be much narrower than expected.
Well, certainly that's not a message that the Hillary Clinton campaign is putting out there. What they've been talking about from the beginning is that she is hard at work earning and trying to appeal to every voter in South Carolina. She has spent the majority of her time in the last 2 weeks in South Carolina making the case for African American voters, for white voters, for every person who lives in South Carolina and who has been hurt by this recovery that has not helped everybody. And, with all due respect to Mr. Alexander, these are not issues that are new to Mrs. Clinton. She has been talking about these issues for the past 4 decades, since being in South Carolina in the 70s, talking about juvenile justice reform, to health care for millions of kids in the 90s, to criminal justice reform in the Senate. The list goes on, and that's why you see a very robust support for Mrs. Clinton among African Americans, including young African Americans, not just in South Carolina, but in other southern states, in Georgia, in Texas, in Louisiana, and all of that is going to help her moving forward into Super Tuesday.
To Super Tuesday, let me ask you about Super Tuesday. After New Hampshire, there was a strong narrative for Bernie Sanders, but after the loss in Nevada, the expected loss here, does he need to make a change?
Well, I think the loss in Nevada really wasn't a loss. When 2 weeks before the Nevada primary, he was down by 15, 18 points, and he narrowed that gap to 5 points. So it's really not a loss.
There's a winner, there's a loser.
I understand, but they expected him to lose by a larger margin. So by him losing by 5 to 7%, I think that's, in my mind's eye, that's a victory for him, and we're relying on that victory to take us not only here in South Carolina but across the state in terms of narrowing those margins that exist right now.
Does Maria, coming out to you, does Secretary Clinton have to adjust her campaign? We know that there have been some rhetorical changes, and some attribute those to Senator Sanders, but does she need to adjust her campaign to attract more younger voters?
Well, I think that she has focused on doing exactly that, Victor, and she's been very open in terms of talking about it, that she's going to do everything that she can to appeal and to attract every voter. But I think what is so interesting about what she's saying is that even if young voters don't support her, she's going to support them, meaning that she will continue to push policies that are going to help them pay for college, that are going to help them pay for their families once they have those young families. And while, Mr. Sanders is focused on beautiful rhetoric, talking about a political revolution, which is wonderful to hear, Mrs. Clinton is focusing on real solutions instead of a revolution, because that is what middle-class families, young voters, Latinos, African Americans want and deserve. They want real action, and they want to see real change.
It's interesting.
They will all be at the polls today. We got to wrap it there.
That's right.
Maria Cardona in Washington Forest, Terry Alexander here with me in Columbia.
Thank you,
you both.
Thank you.
Still ahead, Ron Brownstein is going to join us. He's written a piece for The Atlantic that says that Trump is waging a two-front war